Oh, hey there. I didn't see you watching me. By the way, that's creepy. Were you in the bushes? Why are you watching me from the bushes? This is weird. I didn't want to start the video like this. Hi, I'm Garrett. I'm your local Infj. I don't know if you can hear me. There's air conditioning units on all around. I'm chilling outside. But I refuse to move, so you're gonna have to deal with it. So I was asked very specifically by some Instagram followers what people can do to help. And I was asked to explain the Black experience as it pertains to racial injustice in America. So I want to address that more specifically. It will be from an INFJ perspective because I'm an INFJ, but it won't be through the lens of my functions. It'll just be through my own eyes. So asking me that question is not wrong. First of all, it's never wrong to want to understand or to want to empathize or to learn. But it's weird because it would be like asking someone what the American experience during coronavirus is like. Of course, everyone's coronavirus experience is vastly different depending on their individual circumstances. Some people have lost their jobs. Some people are working from home. Some people are essential workers and they're putting themselves at risk every day. Some people come from households that are unsafe and they're trapped in their households. Some people needed the break and they're having time to kind of tune out and tune into themselves. It's just the situation is so varied that it's hard to put a definition to the American experience. Same thing with the Black experience in America. It's going to be very different depending on where you live. It's going to be very different depending on your family, your wealth, and just the personal experiences that you've had. So that doesn't mean that there's not a shared communal experience. Just like with coronavirus, we're all going through it, right? So there are certain things that most of us share. And the same thing with the Black experience in the United States. There are certain things that many of us share. I'll tell you a little bit about some of my experiences growing up for those people that say that racism doesn't exist. I don't know how you can still think that. If you're open-minded and you've talked to any Black person, I don't know how you can still think that. And I'm an open-minded person. I try to be open to different views, but it seems to me that there's enough exposure out there nowadays that if you wanted to understand the other side, you could. So at this point, if you're in your bubble, you're in your bubble on purpose. So some of my experiences, I grew up in a family with two Black parents, one mixed, one Black parent, both light skinned, obviously. In a, well, guys, this is why you put on bug spray before you come outside, okay? Don't talk to me about the pathogens or talk to me about this mosquito. Jeez. Okay. That was... I'm sure that was very entertaining. Where was I? Right, so I grew up with Black parents black parents with two vastly different experiences growing up themselves. One being mixed, one being black. But I grew up in a predominantly white community. In fact, we were the first black family to move into our community. The first black family in our neighborhood. So, what does that mean, Garrett? You're not that old. Racism's not really a thing in America anymore. Well, you can tell that to the people that decided to spray paint swastikas on our garage doors and to tell us to go back where we came from. Which for me, I guess that meant go back to the womb, because this was the only place I ever lived. You can tell that to the guys who drove by and threw trash in our yard and called me and my little brother the N-word. You can tell that to the teachers that attempted to fail my brother by saying that he must have had my mom write his paper for him, because there's no way he was smart enough to write something like that. Instead of putting us in advanced classes, they threatened to fail us. That's called institutionalized racism. So, I know that for some people, if they're not racist, they don't see that kind of thing every day, but we live it every day. And when I say every day, I mean the teacher that doesn't believe that you have what it takes, so he treats you differently. I mean the friend group that doesn't fully accept you because, I don't know, I just don't really vibe with him. He doesn't look like me. He's not the same culturally as me. I mean being watched more closely when you're in the store. I mean the cops who you're supposed to be able to turn to for safety slamming you on the hood of the car. These things have happened to me. And this is me. This is somebody who was a straight AB student. AB. You notice I slipped that in there. Yeah, so there's a post going around right now. How old were you when the police first pulled a gun on you? And I don't know any black male who hasn't had a gun pulled on them by the police. Think about that. Think about that. It's one thing if you're running the streets. I was never running a damn thing. I was an introvert, an INFJ, inside my house, playing my video games in my own head. But I had a gun pulled on me. So I don't know what to tell you about what the black experience is, but there is a black experience. And it's an experience devoid of privilege. So when people talk about white privilege, they're not condemning white people. They shouldn't be condemning white people. What they're doing is they're saying you haven't had to live a life where you had these fears or these anxieties that come with being black. Your privilege is that you don't have to think about race. That's the privilege. The privilege is that I am free to create my own destiny. And with black people, there's an extra barrier. So there's many barriers in life. There's wealth, there's property ownership, there's gender, and there's race. And so if you don't have to deal with that barrier, that's a privilege. And that's all it means. I hope that makes sense. I'm tired of this bickering where people aren't even talking about the same thing. It's what happens when people when vested interests don't like a term because that term is contrary to their interests in life. Like, for instance, Black Lives Matter. And so they take that term and they make it mean something that it never meant to rile up their side. Like, of course Black Lives Matter, right, guys? Of course they do. We don't go to a breast cancer awareness event and tell them that all cancer matters. The reason it's Black Lives Matter is because black people haven't been able to live this privilege. They're too often treated like their lives don't matter. So that the term is a reminder that, yes, Black Lives Matter too. So, I don't know what to tell people. I mean, maybe they're the same people showing up to, women's rights marches, talking about how men have rights too. Or maybe they're the same people showing up at Alcoholics Anonymous events saying, all drugs matter. Like, there should be a, why isn't this all drug anonymous? It literally is that stupid. Now, I hope that you can see how ridiculous it sounds to argue that Black lives don't matter. So anyway, this co-opting of a term and then changing the meaning of it is something that happens all the time. And it's something that's happened with the term white privilege. Probably going to have to stop talking because Baltimore is happening around me. There's a 50-50 chance that you're not going to be able to hear any of this because my voice isn't loud enough. I do understand that. So maybe I should keep it short. Anyway, I just wanted to address some of these things. There is so much confusion, and like I said, it's been exhausting for me recently, but I feel like it's partially my responsibility. People trust me, people respect me, and I wanted to speak to people that maybe don't understand, especially people that want to understand, and people that want to show their friends who don't want to understand something that maybe opens their eyes. Talk to them about why Black lives matter. Talk to them about this co-opting of terms like white privilege, where there's also a male privilege, which I have, right? I don't have to go around always worrying about if someone's checking me out, worried about walking down an alley at night time because I might be assaulted. I don't have to worry about being disqualified for a job because of my gender. So that's my male privilege. And if you're a white person, you have white privilege. And you could even go deeper and say I have light skin privilege because I don't have to deal with some of the stuff that my darker family members and friends have to deal with. So it's a privilege. That's what it is. Sorry if you don't want to be reminded that you have an advantage in the world. But for those of us that don't have the advantage, we would appreciate it if you have a little bit of empathy. And keep in mind, this doesn't have anything to do with class, or I mean, it does have something to do with class. It doesn't have anything to do with wealth levels, because if you are a poor white person, or if you are a poor male, you still have privileges that a poor black person or a poor female doesn't have. You see? Like, it's not saying that your life is easy. It's just saying you have one less barrier. And the race barrier is a large barrier. It is all-inclusive. It is something that most of us deal with every single day. So, I'll give you an example. When I was growing up, my first girlfriend was black. And we were going to see a superhero movie. I don't remember which movie. We pulled over to the side of the road, and she played guitar. She played and she sung. And she wanted to show me a song that she just wrote. So before going to the movie theater, it was around sunset. We pulled over to a parking lot, and like there was a park, and it was like a park. And so she said, "Let me show you the song." And I said, "Cool." So we were talking in the car. She was just about to take out her guitar. She had it in her lap. And cops approached the car. As soon as I looked over at them, they pulled their guns. And they ran to the car door, the car window, and started screaming. So, of course, hands come up. Long story short, because I don't feel like reliving this story. As I start to tell it, I don't feel like reliving it. But, long story short, they asked us several times if we had any weapons. No. They asked us several times if we had any drugs. No. First of all, it still seems strange to me that we would have even been questioned in the first place. This is not a city that we lived in at the time. This is the suburbs. This is a park. This is a nice area. Okay? Maybe we didn't belong there. But, so the whole time we're responding, they're giving this, sure. So they say, what's in the guitar case? And I said, a guitar. And they said, oh, okay. They said, who's the singer? And my girlfriend said, me. And they said, oh, really? You sing? Why don't you sing us a song? So I'm sitting there humiliated while my girlfriend is being asked to prove that she's a singer and to sing to the cops. And I can't do anything because we all know what happens. We don't have privilege. We all know what happens when you try to push back. So she said, what do you want me to sing? And they said, how about some Mariah Carey? And so I had to sit there while my girlfriend sang Mariah Carey for the cops so that they didn't arrest us. Afterwards, they laughed and they walked away. So I guess I should be thankful. But that was one of many incidents. I've been slammed on the hoods of cars because I matched the ID of a suspect, which I hear all the time. Black people match the ID of a suspect, so it gives them permission, I guess, to physically accost us. These experiences are why many black people have built up frustration. Because we've been telling people that this has been happening for years and years and years, and nothing is being done. Most times people are just like, people don't even comprehend like what it must be like to be afraid of the cops every time you see them. Maybe they do. I mean, I know that there's also incidents where cops abuse their power with white people too. That happens for sure. But you can look at statistics and see that law enforcement isn't fair to black people. You can look at the amount of times that black people are taken into custody when they're pulled over. You can look at the amount of time that black people serve in prison for the same crimes as white people. You can look at which crimes are punished more severely, and it's crimes that black people commit more. So anyway, there's an endless number of statistics you can look at. But at the end of the day, we have to be worried about someone calling the cops on us which has also happened to me, for standing there talking to my friend for what the cops will do if they approach us, to make sure they're not scared of us, right? Because that's always the excuse. I was scared he might have a weapon, or I was scared as he walked towards me. So anyway, you can see how this is probably exhausting. When even people that care about you don't help, they say, I see, and then that's it. Oh, I understand, and that's it. And so then you live the next day and you have the same experiences, and then you live the next day, and then you live the next week, and then you live the next month, and then you live the next year, and then you live the next decade, and it's the same problem over and over and over again. So none of this is condoning looting or the burning of buildings. But what I'm trying to do is remind people that the major issue that has resulted in the wounded animal lashing out is still being perpetrated every day. And until that issue is resolved, you're not going to be able to nicely ask the wounded animal to please behave. Once the wounded animal lashes back, he's not going to lash back rationally. And the one thing I'm thankful for is that these protests have opened up a conversation in a way that hasn't been done. And I think coronavirus has enabled that because people are paying attention. But it's opened up a conversation where people are actually, some people that have never, their eyes have never been open before, finally open. And it's a shame that it takes violence and the destruction of property, not the killing of black people, to open up this type of dialogue, but it seems to have been opened. And so here, this is me having an honest conversation with you guys. I didn't want to be the guy that just talked about personality types and just kind of skirted over the underlying issue. It's important to me. It's something I live. It's something I've watched my friends live. To see my darker skinned friends and how they've been treated sometimes. I've been co-opted by white people sometimes and told that I'm not really one of them. There's a difference between inward monkeys and black people. And I'm a black person. I'm not an inward monkey. I've been told by white people that they didn't even know I was black. So I've heard people who I thought were my friends in high school talking about cotton-picking black people as they walk by. I've watched their surprise as I had a problem with that statement, and they said, "Wait, you're not black?" So anyways, I have had a little bit of experience on both sides, and that's my raw, authentic take on the situation. That is a little bit of a light on what the black experience, this all-encompassing black experience, might be like. The frustration of not being heard. The frustration of the microaggressions. You're not really black. On a daily basis that are barriers to your growth or acceptance or inclusion. So hopefully this helped. I don't know. I hate having conversations like this because I know, like, without having someone talking back, there is inevitably going to be people that take it the wrong way. But I hope that most people don't. And I hope that if you have a question, you just ask. Because I love all people, and I feel like that ultimately the way that we're going to get through this is through love. And unfortunately, it had to take some violence to open people's eyes and realize that that kind of love wasn't spreading. Everybody wasn't happy. But I think just like the Black Civil Rights Movement and its initiation, how there are always kind of two sides, and we can symbolize those sides with Malcolm X, early Malcolm X and Martin Luther King if you want to, but the question is, would anything have ever gotten done if there wasn't the threat of the militants and the threat of the Malcolm X's? Would people have even been receptive to Martin Luther King's peaceful protests if there wasn't this threat of destruction of property and threats of violence looming on the other side if things weren't getting done? That's an open-ended question. I don't know the answer to that. But I am all for the love. I am all for the peace. All I know is that Colin Kaepernick, kneeling, and many other examples of black peaceful protests have been ignored or condemned for a long time because apparently they weren't acceptable either. And so, if you keep beating a dog for long enough, and you open the cage door, eventually, this is what happens. Alright guys, enough from me. Please like and subscribe so that maybe one day, one person will see this video.